Hi, my name is Samia Ibtasam, and I'm excited to join the panelists on this panel on the journey of DFS in the global north and global south. Just to start with the introductions, I'm a computer science PhD student at the University of Washington. And my work is on the various factors that impact the technological and financial inclusion. And while I have worked with researchers working in payments and financial services in Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana, and India, most of my work focuses on Pakistan, and I joined the panelist in trying to bring a perspective from the global south. And I would like to talk about the various factors which impact the users, especially the low-income users, low-literate users from the global south in engaging with digital financial services. And as a panelist, I hope to bring your attention to some of these factors. So one of the factors that my research talks about is also of religion, where for instance, the religion of Islam does not support interest. Interest is not allowed in Islam. And thus most of the markets and payments which are based on the interest-based systems are not suitable for the Muslim population. And this is one of the reasons that they do not feel comfortable engaging with or transacting in systems that are based on interest. Another aspect that we should also look at or consider is that of the sociocultural impacts or the impacts of family or the impacts of the culture around our users. So another part of my work also talks about how in collective sociocultural settings, where there is different concept of who is the head of the household, where families live together, parents live together with the children, or there is this concept of how males are the head of the household. Transactions are looked at differently than if they were in a different sociocultural setting. So that's another thing which also impacts users' agency to make transactions, which is what my work also talks about, that not only do users need money to make transactions, they also need access to devices, technological connectivity, and infrastructure to make those transactions. But then they also need agency to make those transactions once they have the money and the phone to make those transactions. And as my co-panelist Eloise also talked about the small business owners and their need for capital, I also looked at women and women business owners and how they are a strong component or a pillar of the community that they provide to. However, these women then also face a gender component in their businesses, because most of low income, low literate women or women from low resource settings do not own those collaterals, properties, or as I said, the financial agency to make those transactions, because most of this is also dealt by the male members of the family. They cannot use that to get any credits or loans. So that is another way of how gender also impacts women, especially small business owners. Which is an important part of being small business owner is the need for money, the need for cash and credit. Which also brings me to the important question of credit and credit history. A lot of the focus on platformization and a lot of the focus on fintechs and developing these softwares for end users is based on the idea of data collection. Credit history is nothing but data collection. The more our users will use these platforms, we'll have data, they will have data, and this data will then determine what they can do. Because credit history is essentially data of the past determining what you can do in the future. However, I think as both academics and industry practitioners, we need to question if this data is helpful and how is this data helping and who. Because when we make these algorithms and these products, these are used by those low income, low literate users that we just talked about in Global South, and they are unable to understand how these algorithms work. So we should make these algorithms more transparent, show how they work, share about how credit scoring works. Thus, the users can then behave in a pattern that can help them, but B, also educate our users about what are the good and bad behaviors that can affect their credit scoring. Because without the lack of how these algorithms work, without the lack of knowledge of how a behavior can impact your future credit score, these users from these emerging markets still continue to behave in the pattern and the ways that they're already behaving, which is misaligned with how the credit scoring or how the market is designed. And thus, this does more harm than good when the users are unaware of how their actions could prevent them from even future payments. And I think that as both practitioners and industry uh, designers and as well as academics, is a good question to ask of how can we make these algorithms more transparent? How can we help our users be more educated about how this can impact them in the future? And lastly, in the panel, we also talk about COVID-19 and how it has brought technology to the forefront, which it definitely has. But one way to remember is that if a pandemic happened, many low-income users also lost their jobs or were at the edge of losing their jobs. They did not just run and buy a smartphone because the world has gone online. So this has also increased the digital divide in many places. And also, while we see a lot of online shopping and online grocery and everything transitioning because of the COVID-19, there are a lot of users out there for whom this has increased the digital gap, because now the things that were even cash based, now the shops and markets that were even open were closed for them. And sometimes they were losing money and losing jobs as well. So we also need to realize of how this has impacted the divide that we might need to bridge as well. So I would love to hear the panelists' thought as well as the audience thought, Kai, about these sociocultural impacts, religions impacts, as well as what practitioners and industry can do in educating the end users about the algorithms, about the behaviors, and about the products that we are trying to make to help them truly. I'm sorry, I cannot be at Kai, but I'm looking forward to the conversation that this panel and the participants of the panel create. Thank you so much for inviting me.